Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fallout. This is where I watch every single minute of every single game of every single week, and I give you, the viewer, all the fantasy football insight that you need to get you prepared for waiver wires and everything going into the next week. We will be reviewing and going through and reacting to every single NFL game, so keep an eye out for a playlist if you're catching this late, but as we've only played at this point one game, this is the only one you get so far. Before we get started talking about this the Panthers Bucs game, please like, subscribe to our channel. The easiest way to subscribe, you can hit the red button on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, which should be here. Go ahead and hit that button. That'll take you to our channel page. You can subscribe. If you comment, we'll be interactive as well. But let me just start with the end of that game. I don't know what the hell that was. Let's just chalk it up to early season jitters by the head coaches and the play callers. Bruce Arians, buddy, you cannot call 2 timeouts in a row. What in the hell are you doing, man? I don't know what you were doing, but you know, you skated by and you got through it, so good for you. Carolina, Norv, 4th and a half yard. You have Cam Newton. Sneak the ball. What are you doing? What are you doing? You have a huge quarterback. Yes, I know he's been injured, but you're talking about the prospects of going 0-2 at home to start the season, including a home loss in the division. That's awful, man. I think the stat is about 16 to 17% of the teams make the playoffs after an 0-2 start. I don't know what the stat is when you lose your first 2 games at home. Norv, you're talking Gorgonzola when it's clearly Bree time, baby. You gotta sneak that ball. I don't know what you're doing. Then you call a play where it's a misdirection play and you pitch the ball to Christian McCaffrey, which I'm not opposed to, but Christian McCaffrey's 5-6 yards deep behind the line of scrimmage. If you're gonna do anything, man, I know Tampa Bay had a tough run defense. We'll talk about that in a little while. But what are you doing, okay? And then before that, yeah, you're about the 11-yard line after that pass interference personal foul with the face masking. Dude, like, why are you throwing 10-yard routes at that point? Tampa Bay has a couple of timeouts left. It does no good to score with a minute and a half left, leaving Tampa Bay with 2 timeouts. It doesn't make any sense. Run the ball. If you're not going to run the ball, do a wide receiver screen or something, man. Hit Curtis Samuel. Let him run up. He was having a great game. Do a high percentage pass play if you're not going to run the ball. And I'm okay with you not running, but a high percentage pass play, you got to get that clock going, man. What are you doing? What are you doing? Anyway, let's get to the fantasy football stuff. Let's just start, I guess, since we were talking about Carolina, let's start with them. Cam Newton, for the second game in a row, he didn't run. I think at this point you can call this a trend. Cam Newton, part of his, and I said this last week as well, part of his fantasy football value is his ability to extend plays with the run, get you those what I call rushing bonus yards from a quarterback. Those rushing yards are worth more than passing yards in pretty much all formats. You know, if he's not running the ball, Cam Newton's not a pocket passer. He's going to have some issues if he's not going to extend the ball. And like I said at the end of the game there, that's Cam Newton territory, man. You got to run Cam Newton. And if he's not your go-to player, if Christian McCaffrey is, there's got to be better play call selection, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not one to really criticize play callers, but that was atrocious at the end of the game. And I think Carolina Panthers fans probably agree with me. And I think Tampa Bay Bucs, I think NFL fans agree with me on that. So Cam Newton, I'm a little bit worried about him because if he's not running, just from a fantasy football point of view, if he's not running, then he's not really getting you the value that he has in previous seasons. That's a problem if he's your starter going forward. Pay attention. If we see the same thing, 2 to 3 carries, not many yards in week 3, you need to probably start looking in other directions, I'm sorry to say. At running back, Christian McCaffrey was bottled up. I think that's more, look, it's not an emphasis on Christian McCaffrey. That's not the issue, right? The issue, I think, was Tampa Bay. For the second week in a row, Todd Bowles had that defense going, okay? So let's talk about the Tampa Bay defense for a little bit. Okay, first week they played the Shanahan offense. Okay, they lost that game, but they really did bottle up that rushing attack. And Shanahan, whether it's Mike or whether it's Kyle, in the history of their league, they've always been able to run the ball. So for Tampa to shut down 2 what should be good rushing offenses between Christian McCaffrey and in San Francisco with the mix of Tevin Coleman before his injury and Matt Breida, that's something you got to pay attention to. Their defense is getting better. I think they look better than they did against the 49ers, and I think they'll continue to get better. Todd Bowles knows what he's doing as a coordinator. He didn't have a great stint with the Jets, but those Jets defenses were always playing tough as well. So remember that. Just because the Jets team lost, the Jets defenses were actually pretty okay. So if you're looking to stream daily fantasy, or if you're looking to stream defenses in your league, look and see who's Tampa Bay's playing. I wouldn't play them against like New Orleans. I wouldn't play them against Atlanta when they're at home in Atlanta. But that Tampa Bay defense, by virtue of being able to stop the run and be able to hold up in the passing game, they're going to be a viable play this season. Back to Carolina, the receivers, DJ Moore again looked really good. He got a lot of targets last week. He will find the end zone eventually. If you're in a league where somebody owns DJ Moore and he's getting antsy because Cam Newton hasn't thrown a lot of touchdowns and all that stuff, it's going to happen. Law of averages. DJ Moore will get in the end zone. He's getting plenty of targets. He's creating separation. That's the key. So he can have bigger games. Cam Newton has always been up and down as a passer in the NFL. What I mean is his consistency will waver. At some point, Cam's going to get dialed in. He's going to throw a lot of touchdowns, and DJ Moore will get some of those touchdowns. Greg Olsen at tight end, he looked really good. I've been talking about him for a while. Obviously, he and Cam Newton have played together for quite some time, and they have great chemistry, and Greg Olsen will find the end zone as well. So daily fantasy, tight end streaming, I like Greg Olsen week to week depending on matchup there. Something to note, back to the Tampa Bay defense, this is the second week in a row now that Tampa Bay has given up good fantasy points to a tight end. It's George Kittle, Greg Olsen, those are pretty good tight ends. But that's something you want to pay attention to, especially in daily fantasy football matchups. If you're looking for one of those cheaper, or if you're streaming tight ends, if you're looking for a waiver pickup and play, Tampa Bay has shown an inability to cover tight ends, or at least be willing to let the tight end beat them and bottle up some of the other offensive weapons. I mean, if you're Tampa Bay, you can't be too concerned about letting Greg Olsen get a lot of yards when you're bottling up Christian McCaffrey, right? You got to pick your poison in some situations. Back to receiver for Carolina, Curtis Samuel. Look, he was creating a lot of great separation. He could have had a huge game. Cam missed him on a couple of routes. There was one play I saw towards, I think, the end of the game, maybe at the end of the game. I can't really recall when it was, but I know it was late. Curtis Samuel, I think, on an out route, broke open and created some separation, but Cam Newton got hit as he was throwing the ball and he was incomplete. What I don't like from Curtis Samuel is it seems he gets up and, if he creates some separation, if he's open and he doesn't get the ball, or if the pass was errant or something like that, he gets up and he's, kind of huffing and puffing. I don't like that. He's got to clean that up, but that's just me, an old guy, just, being an old fart. So don't worry about it that too much. It's not going to affect your fantasy football team. I just like to complain every now and then. For Tampa Bay, Jameis Winston looked better. Didn't have a great statistical game, but he looked a lot better than he did in week 1 against San Francisco. So, this whole Bruce Arians, Jameis Winston merger, it should be the best, in theory, it should be the best year or 2 years of Jameis Winston's career. As a fantasy quarterback, I don't love him as your starter, but if he's a backup, depending on matchup, I think it could work out well. The good news, I think, from the running back situation, at least if you have him, is Peyton Barber looked a lot better this week than Ronald Jones did. Last week, I thought Ronald Jones looked more explosive. This week, I'll say Peyton Barber looked more powerful, and maybe they used him more because it was very rainy. The weather was bad in that game. Maybe they just went to Peyton Barber more as kind of a ground and pound type game, but I'd still think he'll be the short yardage running back. The other guy, Ronald Jones, did not get a passing target. Peyton Barber, I think he had 1 catch, so not a lot of targets out of the backfield for him. But Peyton Barber did kind of basically reassert himself, I thought, as the most valuable back in that league. That's good news for me personally because I have him on my bench in my league. But Ronald Jones, just this is a wait and see. We'll see. It might just be that the Tampa Bay Bucs are riding the hot hand. So there you go. At receiver, I got to say Chris Godwin looks like he's the more preferred wide receiver at this point, but there could be a lot of factors. I mean, the first week, San Francisco, Richard Sherman, they're keying in. They're trying to stop Mike Evans because he's a huge weapon, like physically and metaphorically, right? So he's a big target, and they're trying to lock him down. That opens things up for Godwin, okay? We saw this last week with Cincinnati versus Seattle. Seattle was keying in on Tyler Boyd. John Ross was running clear, got a lot of touchdowns. Well, Godwin had a great game. I think he was targeted maybe 11 times, caught 10 balls, 120 yards, a touchdown. Maybe it was 12 and 11, I don't know, but I know he was targeted a lot. He only did not catch one of those targets. So they were making it count. He was creating separation. I think he's a fantasy football stud in the making. At tight end, I'm a little bit more concerned. Last week when they played San Francisco, I said, well, it was good to see O.J. Howard was kind of involved. O.J. Howard, no targets. He was involved in the blocking game. Cameron Brate, I think, had a catch or two. That's not good news if O.J. Howard is your weekly starter. I was worried about that to begin the season. Bruce Arians isn't a guy that always utilizes his tight ends depending on what other weapons he has. O.J. Howard, I mean, it's going to be a game plan week-to-week thing. It's not going to be like, I would say, in Tennessee, I think Marcus Mariota is always going to lean on Delaney Walker, or obviously like Travis Kelce or Zach Ertz. Those guys are always going to get catches. I don't know that that's going to be the case with O.J. Howard. As talented as he is, you know, if they're not scheming him, it's not a case, I think, where Winston's always going to look Howard's way when he's in trouble, like some of the other tight end situations in the league. So that's something you want to just kind of watch with caution. Don't panic. Watch with caution. And I think that takes us through the week. You know, Carolina Panthers defense is always good. Tampa Bay's defense, I think, is a great stream. Curtis Samuel is a guy on waivers you want to target. Peyton Barber, I think you're definitely a hold on him after his performance. Norv, baby, sneak the ball. Sneak the ball. You can't go down 0-2, 2 losses at home, including 1 in the division, 2 in the conference. It's bad. I'm sorry, Carolina, but I think you agree with me. Gosh, Cam. I feel bad for Cam too, man. You know he wanted the ball in that situation, but it is what it is. Anyway, again, everybody, on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, there's a red button. Please subscribe. If you comment on this show, I will reply. Yes, me. I will reply to your comments on this show as well. Keep an eye out for more episodes of the Fantasy Football Fallout in the playlist, and just subscribe to the channel. It's the easiest thing you can do. Do it. All right. Thanks, everybody.